The majority of Christian groups are operating on the basis of theology. Theology has been exalted, but theology is the product of the natural mind. Christianity comes by revelation. You don't understand the Bible by reasoning. I tried to do that as a philosopher. I couldn't make sense of it. You only understand the Bible by the revelation of the Holy Spirit. And basically, you will find that the people who try to establish reason and intellectual processes as the basis of the order of the church have set aside the moving of the Holy Spirit and ultimately the authority of Scripture. They have placed education above discipline. How many of Jesus' disciples ever went to a theological institution? You know, it's common, and I mean, it's done with me, so I'm not criticizing anyone. When a preacher or an author presents himself in Christian circles, they give his educational qualifications. He graduated from such and such a college and he obtained his master's degree here and his doctorate here. And really, the general attitude of the church is if he doesn't have that, he's not worth listening to. Well, in that case, dear friend, Jesus made a very bad choice. And he did not take his disciples into a classroom. He trained them in action. The education is no substitute for discipline. Education is the carnal approach. Discipling is a spiritual process. This illegitimate order that we're talking about puts eloquence and methods and program over supernatural direction and supernatural power. My impression is, and you again are free to correct me, that the majority of religious leaders in the church today are afraid of anything they can't control. But anything they can control lacks the power to do the job. What has happened? The carnal mind has been re-established as the ruler over the spirit. Paul has got some things to say about the carnal mind. In Romans 8 verse 7, he says, the carnal mind is enmity against God. For it is not subject to the law of God, no indeed can be. There's no way that the carnal mind can submit itself to God. See, basically, when we insist that candidates for the ministry, quote, attend theological institutions, and often for many years, what we're doing is educating the carnal mind. But at the end of all that, all you've got is an educated enemy of God. I can understand your smile. I'm not jesting. And I would say probably the most virulent opponents of God and the Holy Spirit and the Scriptures are the products of seminaries. Now, I'm no desire to speak evil of anybody, but I just want to state the facts. And I want to lay bare the root cause. The root cause is that the divine order of spirit over mind has been reversed. The fleshly nature has put in authority over the spiritual. Esau has been given authority over Jacob. You can give it a half a dozen different expressions. And we're so used to it being that way that it takes a real jolt from the Holy Spirit to see how totally contrary it is to the divine order. I really aim not to speak disrespectfully of anybody, but I believe I have to obey what God has made so clear to me. The church is living up down. Now, I mean, there are wonderful exceptions. And thank God I've been privileged to be amongst those are the exceptions in many different cases. But if you view the church as we know it as a whole, the divine order has been reversed. And man's carnal nature has been reinstated as the authority. What is the power that's done that? Witchcraft. That's my conviction. You see, I personally believe the problem of the Galatian church is the commonest single problem in the church today as we know it. George Burwer, who's the founder of Operation Mobilization, said in one of his books that the greatest stumbling block in the church to converts is legalism. And I agree to that personally. I think that's right. Let's just contrast that with what Paul says. Let's look at the order that Paul established and contrast it with what we know. 1 Corinthians chapter 2, verses 1 through 5. Now, when you read this, you need to bear in mind that the historical background is Acts chapter 17 and 18. In chapter 17, Paul was in Athens, which you could call the university city of the ancient world. And he gave a lecture to the political leaders. And it was a very intellectual discourse, and he quoted their own poets. He sought to meet them on their own ground, but the results spiritually were very meager. A few people believed. And Paul went on from Athens to Corinth, which was a large, wicked port city with all the typical vices and problems of a port city. And somewhere between Athens and Corinth, Paul made a decision. And he said, in effect, I'm never going to do again what I did in Athens. And this is his decision. And I, brethren, when I came to you, did not come with excellence of speech or of wisdom, declaring to you the testimony of God. For I determined, I made up my mind, not to know anything among you except Jesus Christ and Him crucified. What was he focusing on? The cross. He said, that was my mistake in Athens. I didn't tell them about the cross. He said, I'm not going to make mistakes in Corinth. I'm going to forget all I knew. I'm not going to quote poets and philosophers and psychiatrists. Of course, he didn't say psychiatrists. That's just added by the prince. I was with you in weakness, in fear, and in much trembling. My speech and my preaching were not persuasive words of human wisdom, but in demonstration of the Spirit and of power. What's the alternative? The supernatural power of the Spirit demonstrated. And he gives a reason in verse 5, that your faith should not be in wisdom of men, but in the power of God. So I want your faith based on theology, on religious theories, on intellectual discourses. I want your faith based on one thing, a personal experience of the supernatural power of God in your own life. I can identify with that because I was in educational work in East Africa. 5 years I was principal of a college for training African teachers for African schools in Kenya. And my primary purpose was to win them for Christ, although I also was responsible for their education. And after a while, I realized that they were immunized to the kind of Christianity that they had been exposed to. And that just kind of teaching wasn't getting anywhere. So I called the student body together, which was about 120 students, and I said, now I thank you that you're really very obedient and